Hi, we're Bonnie and Greg Dixon with Health Pioneer Theater, Natural Health Movement, here with our partner Jerry Smith, and we're going to talk about Dr. Joseph Pizzorno. Jerry?
Hello, everybody. I bet all of you have heard of a naturopathic physician, and I bet all of you have heard of an acupressure specialist, or acupuncturist rather. But do you know why they can practice in the United States in 2021? Because they really couldn't back in the 1970s. They were really disdained by the lack of what was perceived as legitimacy and certification issues and so forth. Now, if you wonder why this happened in the United States, since medical doctors used to practice natural medicine in the end of the 19th century and the turn of the 19th to 20th century, go on Wikipedia and look up the Flexner Report, F-L-E-X, Flexner Report, and you understand what happened through one of the Carnegie Institutes, the same one that brought us other questionable practices, such as the eugenics and so forth. They came out with a report that said this is all a bunch of bunk, and we're going to close all of those schools of learning and methodologies down. So by the time the 1970s rolled around, it was really hard to find anybody who would certify a physician as a naturopathic physician. Well, that all changed when Dr. Joseph Pizzorno, not a doctor at the time, entered the field, entered the history, and it was historic what he accomplished. I had the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Pizzorno a couple of years ago, and we're going to show about 18 minutes of his 30-minute or so interview, 19, just under 19. It really
Yeah, it seems we have some sound issues here. Okay. And we're undergoing storms in the California and the West Coast, and that may be interfering with our internet connection. Anyway, what we'll do is we'll play the video here, and we'll hope that works okay, and then we'll check in with you at the end of the video.
My entry into the field of natural medicine pretty unusual from most of my colleagues. So my journey started out way back in 1969 when I graduated from Harvey-Mudd College in chemistry. Then I went off to do a doctoral program at Cornell University in New York. And I thought I'd become a research scientist and loved what I was doing. Unfortunately, it was at the height of the Vietnam War. And as I got involved in the doctoral program, I realized I was being involved in the war effort, and at that point it didn't match up with my philosophy in life. So I decided instead of contributing to the war effort, I'd leave graduate school, come out to Seattle, and I'd work in medical research. So I was working along in medical research, and I really enjoyed doing it. In the process of working in medical research, and the process of deciding I didn't want to be involved in the doctoral program leading to the war effort, I started reading about nutrition and such, and decided to become a vegetarian. Now, I'd like to say there's some great scientific reason for it, or even this great, might say, spiritual, philosophical reason for it. But I just became curious about it. So I became vegetarian. And as I became vegetarian, kind of my worldview started changing. So off I went to do medical research. And I was thinking, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a PhD in medical research instead. And then the woman who married my roommate from college one day mentioned to me that she'd been cured of her juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. Now, I thought that was interesting because I was actually working at the Department of Rheumatology at the University of Washington School of Medicine. And I was working with MDs and PhDs trying to find a cure for arthritis. And rheumatoid arthritis was an incurable disease. Yet my friend had been cured of her arthritis. What's going on here? So being scientifically oriented, I said, well, so what happened? She said, well, I went to a naturopathic doctor. And my response was, what's that? because at that point, I knew there were, MDs and PhDs. I'd occasionally seen a sign for a chiropractor, but I had no idea what that meant. So, I went to the naturopathic doctor and said, "So what'd you do for my friend?" And he said, "Well, I taught her how to eat properly, and I detoxified her liver." So what's her liver have to do with her hands and her knees being swollen? So that was quite interesting. Now, having become a vegetarian, I asked one of the medical doctors I was working with, what do these changes in my body mean from becoming vegetarian? And his response was, there are errors in your observation because diet does not affect you. Now remember, this is half a century ago, and that was kind of standard medical belief at that point. So, being objective, I asked the naturopathic doctor exactly the same questions. So he said, here he is, he's cured my friend. And so I said, I've seen some change in my body from becoming a vegetarian. What does it mean? So he went to his bookshelf, pulled Guyton's Medical Physiology textbook off his bookshelf. And at that point, that was like one of the standard textbooks for conventional medicine. And then showed me physiologically how becoming a vegetarian was changing my body. I thought, well, that's interesting. This naturopathic doctor seems to know physiology better than the MDs. So that was a big surprise. So anyway, I then said, well, can I spend a few days see patients? And I would see, quote, miracle case after miracle case of people who conventional medicine had failed, come see this naturopathic doctor with these vitamins and herbs and physical medicine such, he'd restore their health. It was just stunning. So anyway, now I'm curious, but go back doing medical research. Then there's another occurrence. So I was helping a MD do a postdoc. She was doing a research study on a new drug for rheumatoid arthritis. So the model at that time was ducks. So they're using a duck model because you can see the duck bill. They're really easy to see what's going on with their inflamed feet. So the ducks came in. We went over to the vivarium to check out the ducks, make sure the right ducks, et cetera, because these are ducks that were genetically bred to get rheumatoid arthritis. So they always get rheumatoid arthritis. So very simple study. Half got placebo, half got the drug. Did the ducks getting the drugs do better? So we went to the vivarium, checked, yep, all the right ducks were there. But this MD was kind of a kind-hearted woman. When you look at the ducks, these poor ducks were in these tiny little cages. I mean, just barely big enough for them, and they looked miserable. Now you might say, wait, how do you know if a duck's miserable? Okay, anybody who has pets will tell you, if your pet's unhappy, they make it known. So she got together with her husband. They got an empty lab, and they built a little duck run for the ducks. They put some plywood up, put some sand in there. They put in some little plastic swimming pools so they could swim around. They brought some fresh fruits and vegetables, and now they have to run around quacking, and they're all really happy. So what happened? The ducks didn't get the arthritis. So at her going away party, or say almost like a wake, people were saying, oh, we're so sorry, your study didn't work out, and your postdoc was a waste, et cetera, et cetera. I'm looking at all of them and saying, wait a minute, don't you get it? It wasn't that we couldn't test the drugs. It was by giving them a healthier lifestyle, they didn't get the disease, so they didn't need the drugs. Right there in front of you is the real cure for any disease is not to get it. So I looked at that and said, well, that's interesting. Here we have a situation where it's this naturopath using these natural therapies and people get better, have this own direct experience with these animals, feed them properly, they don't get a disease they were bred for. I think I'll be a naturopathic doctor instead of a researcher. So I decided to become a naturopathic doctor. So I started looking into it and discovered that there was only one naturopathic college left in all of North America. Conventional medicine had been very successful at suppressing this body of knowledge. So if you look back in the 1950s, the profession was actually developing very, very quickly, naturopathic medicine. Licensed in over 20 states. They're developing more science-based education, making a lot of progress. And then over a period of just 7 years, the MDs went after the naturopaths and they destroyed the profession. And they went from 22 states licensed to, when I enrolled way back in 1971, only 6 states still licensed naturopathic doctors, and we were a felony in 2 states. So it was very, very grim. And the reason that conventional medicine was able to discredit natural medicine it's kind of two big reasons. Number one is this was an era where it looks like drugs are going to be working. You get antibiotics, getting after infection works very well. Cortisone, getting inflammation down very quickly. We've just gone through world wars that have now developed surgical procedures, very, very effective. So look at conventional medicine is doing really well. So we went to state legislatures and said, well, you don't need this natural medicine, these herbs and vitamins and things. We got these drugs. We got the surgery. We're really effective. You don't need the naturopaths. And in addition, they engaged their political bodies to basically destroy everything about the profession. So here I am way back in the 1970s, 71. Only one school left in all North America. And it was so hard for the profession to even exist that virtually all my teachers were teaching for free. One of my teachers would basically come from Kamloops, Canada, every couple of months to teach us his body of knowledge, because in many situations, there are very limited number of people left who understand these key aspects of natural medicine, and they were dying off. It was just disappearing. So I went to school, and the good news is that I got to spend time with some really good clinicians. The bad news is that they weren't teachers, they weren't academics. The educational program is not very good. Nonetheless, I went through the 4-year program, graduated in 1975, and they made a pledge to myself that I believe this medicine had a future, but it could not become an important part of the healthcare system until it came to modern standards of education and research, textbooks, things like this. So, for example, when I was in school, the most modern textbook in naturopathic medicine was written in the year I was born. I mean, that's how bad it got. So I got myself elected to the board of trustees of the school I went to, which was National College of Naturopathic Medicine. And I made a pledge to the student body that I would spend 2 years trying to bring NCNM up to modern standards of education. And if I couldn't do it, I'd go off and start my own school. I was a really young man at that point, and I had no idea what I was saying. I was making my commitment rather than thinking I would ever have to start a school. But it turns out, after 2 years of trying to get the school to move forward, I realized that the profession was in a bunker mentality. Because conventional medicine had been so effective at destroying all the other schools, delicensing the profession, they didn't want to stick their head above the foxhole because they would get chopped off. And I realized, well, yes, that would mean survival, but the value that this medicine brought to helping alleviate human suffering wasn't going to happen that way. So I decided to start my own school. Got together with my friends, Drs. Les Griffith and Bill Mitchell, and invited a good friend of mine, Sheila Quinn, to start a new school. I mentioned it to my receptionist, who mentioned it to her mother, and her mother said, what a great idea. And she sent me a check for $200. And with $200, I started what was then named the John Bastyr College of Naturopathic Medicine. Now, one of the ironies of that kind donation was that I'd always considered myself a failure with her because I was only able to clear up 75% of her rheumatoid arthritis. I couldn't get her enough improved that she didn't need the drugs anymore. Her perspective was, well, I've been suffering from the severe disease. I'm so much better. I can dramatically decrease my use of drugs, which means I'm not getting the side effects of the drugs. I think you're a great doctor. We need more like you. It's always interesting. The doctor says, well, I want to get it perfect. And the patient says, wow, I'm so much better. I'm so grateful. So with that $200 in 1978, we started the John Bastyr College of Naturopathic Medicine. Now, when I started Bastyr, I had a very clear vision of science-based natural medicine. My belief was that if this body of knowledge had validity, it should be subjectable to research, and it should be reproducible. We need to write modern textbooks. We need to do accredited education. We need to do it right. So when I started Bastyr, that's what I did. I first recruited PhDs to teach the basic sciences. So anatomy, physiology, pathology, biochemistry, it doesn't belong to any particular field. It's a body of knowledge. So I brought in PhDs to teach that to the students. Then for the diagnostic courses, I invite a lot of MDs in because MDs are very good at diagnosing disease. They're not very good at treating most diseases. I mean, MDs are great at treating acute disease and injuries, things like that. I mean, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Conventional medicine does a lot of wonderful things. But in terms of health promotion and reducing and removing the underlying cause of disease, it's not a very good model. The drug model is not very good for that. So anyway, so then I got the MDs doing diagnosis, and I got the naturopaths teaching how to cure people naturally, all the therapies, how you work with the body rather than try to take over the body. Or if you look at the effect of most drugs these days, all they do is turn off symptoms. They don't deal with the underlying cause of why people are sick. So I started Bastyr and I did it right. And by doing it right, Bastyr became the first accredited University of Natural Medicine anywhere in the world. Because this medicine had never been accredited by any government agency anywhere that I'm aware of, at least in the English-speaking world. And doing that properly, we did good quality education, we engaged in good quality research, we started getting articles published. So in 1983, one of our very early students, Michael Murray, came to me and said, Dr. Pizzorno, I would like to write a modern textbook of naturopathic medicine. Would you do that with me? And I said, God, what a great idea. I'd love to do that. Because like Mike, I've been looking at a lot of research and finding research support for this. Now it had to be compiled. So we got together in 1983 and spent 2 years and created the first edition of the textbook of natural medicine. And in this textbook, we compiled the research that was available in PubMed. It's not like we were making this up. The research was there. Nobody was using it. So we compiled the first edition of the textbook. It was about 1,000 pages. We had about 7,500 references, and we showed that a lot of the basic concepts and interventions of natural medicine had very good research support. And what was exciting about the research support, it was showing it was reversing the disease, not simply decreasing the symptoms of the disease. It was fundamental. So we created the textbook. Now, in retrospect, some 35 years later, I realized how pivotal that particular work was in providing the kind of scientific foundation for this revolution in medicine we're seeing today. I can't tell you how many MDs have come to me and said, I got into medicine because I wanted to heal people, but after I've been doing it for a while, I realized all I was doing is giving people drugs, and while the drugs will make them more comfortable in the short term, they will continue to get sicker and sicker and need more and more drugs and then eventually fail. And that wasn't why I got into medicine. Then I read your textbook. And I read your textbook and it reminded me of why I got into medicine. And that from there, they went to integrated medicine, functional medicine, things of this nature. So now that textbook has sold 100,000 copies. Over half were bought by MDs. It's been translated into 6 languages all over the world. So it proved to be a very important time for helping establish the credibility for thinking fundamentally different about medicine. If you look at the history of Western medicine, going back to Greco-Roman days, there's been basically 2 schools of thought. One school of thought is what's called the Asclepian school of thought, and the other is the hygienic or Gaia school of thought. So the one school of thought was the body makes mistakes, the body's a victim of the environment, we're all the doctors to take control and fix things. The other school of thought, the hygiene school of thought, is the body has tremendous ability to heal, and the role of the doctors is to understand what's blocking the body from healing and support the natural healing processes. If you look at the history of medicine, the pendulum swung back and forth, back and forth. And in reality, right now we have a system which has been dominated for over almost 100 years now by that conventional doctor take control, use drugs, the body makes mistakes, and take control, be authoritarian there. Whereas the other school of thought has been politically and socially and financially suppressed. The best healthcare system is not one or the other. I hate the term alternative medicine. That means one or the other. No, it's not true. You need both. The conventional medicine works great in areas like you have an infection overwhelming the body, got involved in an accident, your body's been damaged, some diseases progressed so far, now that the body can't fix it anymore, you've got to take care of it. It works great in those situations. But it doesn't work well, it doesn't work very effectively at all. As a matter of fact, it probably is a detriment to the other side of the equation, which is making the body stronger. Helping people understand why they're sick and how to become healthy. Most disease today is due to factors that are under the control of people who are sick and who need the doctors to help them understand that. Less than 20% of disease is due to genetics. All the rest, 80%, is diet, lifestyle, environment, all the things that people choose. So the best doctor, from my perspective, is one who first off, understands where the patient fits. Do you need higher intervention, or do you need nurturing and health restoration? And then with that nurturing health restoration, understand what is blocking the body from functioning properly. Do they have high levels of, for example, arsenic in the water supply? Most people don't realize that arsenic accounts for about 1/4 of all cancers. I can give you an example. An example where the cause is understood, the cause is controllable, we can fix it, dramatically prevent most disease, and when people have the disease, we can reverse them. Starting Bastyr was very, very hard. Remember, this is way back in the late 70s, and natural medicine was not well received. Again, only 6 states licensed us, and we're a felony in 2 states. So it was really hard. So when I started the school, of course, the first thing I did is I went to the foundations to ask them for donations to get the school started. Well, any foundation that would give money to anything around healthcare would, of course, have an MD on their committee making that decision. And so, of course, I won't be so hard as to say they laughed at us, but basically that's what happened. They said, no, and why even bother to waste our time? So it's pretty clear that the only way to start the school was from an entrepreneurial perspective. Nonetheless, decided to give it a try. So I was able to attract people who believe in what we were doing and were willing to work for below standard wages because they believe in what we were doing. Got the school started, and I early realized we had to become accredited, because until our education was accredited, no one would take us seriously. So I went to the accrediting agency, the local accrediting agency, and they basically said, no, we don't accredit schools of your nature. And being a little naive at that time, I just accepted their statement. Well, another school started a year after us down in Oregon, and they had an attorney do the criteria for accreditation and realized that actually, according to their own laws and bylaws, we were eligible for accreditation. So they applied for accreditation. Now, as it turns out, that school, from my perspective and their perspective, did not have very high educational standards. And so they went through the accreditation process and were not approved. But when I saw that they had done it, I thought to myself, well, we should do it as well, because we had been doing it very, very well. As I said, using conventional textbooks, using conventionally trained PhDs and MDs as part of the educational system, we looked really good. So we applied for accreditation, and indeed, we went through the process, and it was challenging, lots of political challenges, but we went through the process and became the first accredited university of natural medicine ever anywhere in the world. But again, it was hard because there was no money. But once we got accreditation, once we started getting student loans, and with the accreditation, we're now eligible for research grants from the federal government. We started now bringing some resources so we could grow the school, not just in terms of size, which of course was important, but in terms of the quality education we could offer. We could bring in more people, we can bring in more textbooks, we can do research, we can get better facilities, better laboratories, and we're able to take off. I've been involved in medicine now for literally over half a century. First as a medical researcher, then as a student in naturopathic medicine, then as a practitioner in naturopathic medicine, then as a founder of Bastyr University. Over this period of time, I've written 7 books for consumers, 6 textbooks for doctors. I've seen several thousand patients. I've also been involved in corporate wellness programs where almost 20,000 people have utilized tools I've created to help people understand why they're sick and how to become healthy. So I think I've got some pretty good insights about why people are sick. So I think about a patient, and I don't care where they are in the spectrum, whether it's they're healthy now, want to avoid getting disease in the future, or they have a disease now, they want to reverse it, whatever the case may be. And I look at kind of three realms, like a Venn diagram. In this realm here, we have a person's genetics. In this realm here, we have a person's nutritional status. In this realm here, we have their exposure to environmental metals and toxins. And right in the middle is where people get disease, where they have a combination of genetic susceptibility and adequate nutrients for the body to function properly and being exposed to environmental toxins. So now their body is breaking down and they're getting disease. So let's talk more about what that means. Talk about genetics first. So when we look at genetics, while it is true that somewhere between 15 and 20% of disease is due to genetics, the rest of it, 80-85%, is due to not genetics, but other factors. And even those where you have disease due to genetics, if you understand a person's biochemistry and how to use nutrition, you can often mitigate those as well. I would assert that less than 10% of disease is unmodifiable by living healthily. So the vast majority of the reason people are sick is under the control. So let's look at that. Let's look at first nutrition. If you look at people's nutritional status using the conventional standards, over 50% of people are deficient in one or more nutrient. Now that's what the general standards say. I did a corporate wellness program, designed it and implemented it in Canada, where I looked at 4,500 oil field workers, mainly young men, but we also have some office workers as well. And I tested them for the nutritional status, metabolic status, toxin load. I did equivalent about $1,500 of lab tests on 4,500 people. So I got a chance to look at a lot of data on a lot of people. And I found that out of that 4,500 people, less than 1% were not deficient in one or more nutrients.
Well, we'll stop it here. And there's more online, of course, on our YouTube channel. And just wanted a brief discussion on why he had to do all that work. And audio wasn't working in our intro. So let me just give you some homework for those of you who haven't done it. The quick way is to go to Wikipedia and type in Flexner Report, Flexner report. That was published in 1910, was financed by, it was a think tank that was financed by the Carnegie Institute, which there's wonderful folks who brought us the theories of eugenics, which poisoned the well of common decency for at least 50 years in American medicine and American state health departments that incarcerated and sterilized people. So the idea here is that these are very harsh reports for eliminating all botanical medicine, homeopathic medicine, anything that was, not scientifically proven in the eyes of the reporter. And this made vast changes in the tolerance and nature of medicine. So that's one reason why this was necessary, and how negative that agencies around the world or around the country were. But the good news is that they got busy. So I'm a little bit of a fan here. This is he mentioned Dr. Murray, which we plan to have on the show sometime next year. The textbook of natural medicine. So you can weigh it by, it's as wealth is by the pound. And also Dr. Murray and Dr. Pizzorno. This is their third edition of the Encyclopedia of Natural Medicine. You may or may not know it. If you don't have it, you should. It's excellent. And they also did the encyclopedia, both of those folks, of healing foods, along with Laura Pizzorno, Dr. Pizzorno's wife, with some good recipes and so forth. And sometime we'll talk more about Dr. Pizzorno's current book, The Toxin Solution. You can see more about it. Let me get that in focus. There we go. You can see more about it on his website, which we'll post shortly, and buy a copy. It's also available as an audiobook. So Dr. Pizzorno really deserves the honors that he has, but also the honors in our hearts and minds about the amazing work that he did, and how he dedicated himself to the revitalization and re-recognition of natural medicine in various forms, and developing the science. I mean, he was a scientist first. Most people don't know this story, so we hope that you share the story with others and maybe get a copy of one of those books, if not his current book. And if you missed some of this, or if we need to redo it, maybe we'll have Dr. Pizzorno on live. But thank you for joining us. And again, don't forget to remind him, Bonnie, about what we're looking for out there besides new subscribers.
Okay.
We're looking for sponsors for this amazing Health Pioneer Theater to keep us rolling here. We love sharing the stories that make your life easier and better. At the Health Pioneer Theater, we're sharing stories from Jerry, and Greg and I have literally met the greats of our industry of this time. And we look forward to gathering even more amazing information that you may have never known about, but it does affect your life today because they were the pioneers of this industry to make it easier for you to take care of your own health and the health of your family. So we thank you so much for joining us today.
That's
and we
right.
Sign up. Make sure to sign up so you can hear future episodes, and make sure, please, to share with your friends.
Exactly. This is, if you're any retailers out there, or if you work with the natural product retailers, this is an excellent thing for them to, talk about something good to post on their Facebook. This is it. Mm-hmm. And this will not only benefit their business, but more importantly, it'll benefit the perception of value that consumers and customers of your stores should have about what you're doing and what's been done before you. Mm-hmm. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. See you next week. Make sure to sign up.